Days that followed the incident in the park were unlike anything Marcus or Aaliyah had experienced before. What had started as a frightening moment quickly turned into something much bigger than both of them. The video of Aaliyah standing, her ground spread quickly through the neighborhood. It wasn't just kids sharing it, it reached parents, teachers, and even community leaders. Everywhere Marcus went, people seemed to know what had happened. At first, Marcus felt shy about all the attention. Students who had never spoken to him before suddenly stopped him in the hallway to ask about his sister. Some told him how lucky he was to have someone like her. Others said that what she did gave them courage. For the first time in a long while, Marcus didn't feel invisible. He felt like people saw him, not just as a target, but as someone connected to strength and respect. Aaliyah, however, remained the same. She still carried herself with calmness, never letting the attention change who she was. When people tried to praise her, she simply smiled and said, "I just did what anyone should do." She didn't brag, she didn't boast. That humility made people admire her even more. One afternoon, their school principal called Aaliyah into the office. Marcus, curious, waited outside until she came back. When she finally stepped out, she told him the principal had seen the video and wanted her to speak at the next school assembly. Marcus's eyes widened. "You mean, like, in front of the whole school?" Aaliyah nodded, though she looked a little hesitant. "Yes. He wants me to talk about what happened and what it means to stand up for others without violence." Marcus grinned with excitement. "You have to do it, Aaliyah. Everyone will listen to you. You could change the way people think." Though she was shy about being the center of attention, Aaliyah agreed. She knew this was a chance to share a lesson bigger than herself. When the day of the assembly arrived, the entire gymnasium was filled, with students and teachers. Marcus sat in the front row, his hands clutched tightly together, waiting for his sister to speak. As Aaliyah walked up to the microphone, the room fell silent. She didn't start with a long speech. She simply looked around at the faces watching her and said, "What happened in the park wasn't about fighting. It was about protecting." Her voice was clear and calm. She spoke about discipline, about how martial arts had taught her that the strongest person is not the one who strikes the hardest, but the one who can stay calm under pressure. She reminded everyone that bullying doesn't make anyone powerful. It only shows fear hidden behind anger. "I didn't want to embarrass those boys," she said gently. "I wanted them to see that they don't have to hurt others to feel strong. Real strength comes from kindness, patience, and respect." The gymnasium was quiet as her words sank in. Even the teachers looked moved. Marcus sat straighter, his chest filled with pride. When she finished, the entire room clapped. It wasn't the wild cheering of a crowd at a sports game. It was a deep, respectful applause that seemed to come from the heart. Students who had once laughed at Marcus now looked at him differently. And the bullies, sitting quietly at the back, couldn't avoid the weight of her words. After that day, something changed at school. The atmosphere felt lighter. Students who had been too afraid to speak up before now walked a little taller. It wasn't that bullying disappeared overnight, but there was a shift. People had seen what respect and calm strength looked like, and it left a mark. As for Marcus, he began training with Aaliyah in the evenings. At first, it was just simple stretches and breathing exercises, but Aaliyah insisted that the first lesson wasn't about kicks or punches. It was about self-control. "Before you can learn how to defend yourself," she explained, "you have to learn how to stay calm inside. If your mind is peaceful, your body will follow." Marcus listened carefully. Each day he practiced with more focus, not because he wanted to fight, but because he wanted to carry himself with the same confidence his sister had. Slowly, he felt the difference. He wasn't as nervous in the hallways anymore. He didn't walk with his shoulders slouched. He began to believe in himself. The bullies, too, changed in their own way. Though they were embarrassed at first, they began to soften. A week after the assembly, the leader of the group approached Marcus in the hallway. Marcus tensed, expecting another cruel comment, but instead, the boy said quietly, "I'm sorry." Marcus didn't know what to say at first. The words felt strange coming from him, but then he remembered what his sister had said. that sometimes bullies act the way they do because they don't know another path. Marcus gave a small nod. It's okay. Just don't do it again. The boy walked away, and though they never became friends, the bullying stopped. That was enough. Weeks turned into months, and Aaliyah's story continued to inspire others. The local community center invited her to demonstrate martial arts and talk about discipline. Younger kids looked up to her, not because she was a fighter, but because she showed them that strength could be gentle. Marcus watched all of this with pride. He knew that his sister hadn't just protected him that day in the park, she had given him a new way to see the world. He no longer thought of himself as weak or small. He realized that courage wasn't about size or strength. It was about the heart. One evening, as they walked home together under the soft glow of streetlights, Marcus looked up at Aaliyah and said, "You know, that day changed me. I don't feel the same anymore. I feel stronger inside." Aaliyah placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's the most important strength of all, Marcus. The strength inside you. Once you know how to believe in yourself, no one can take that away." They walked on in silence for a while, the bond between them stronger than ever. The world around them carried on as usual, the sounds of cars passing, children playing in yards, neighbors greeting each other. But for the two siblings, everything felt different. They had faced fear, they had faced cruelty, and they had walked out stronger together. For Marcus, the memory of that day would never fade. And for Aaliyah, the lesson she had always known had now been shared with many others. True strength is never about hurting. It's about protecting, about lifting others up when they feel small, and about standing tall not for yourself, but for those who need you most. And so, their story didn't end in the park. It continued in every lesson Aaliyah taught, in every step Marcus took with newfound confidence, and in every person who remembered the girl who stood calm in the face of bullies, showing the world what real power truly looks like. The park slowly grew quiet again after the bullies walked away, but the energy of what had just happened still lingered in the air. People who had gathered continued to whisper among themselves, some glancing at Aaliyah with admiration. A few even smiled at Marcus as if silently telling him that his sister was someone very special. Marcus held his backpack tightly, still catching his breath. His clothes were a little dirty from when he had fallen, but he didn't care. What mattered was that he was safe now, thanks to Aaliyah. He looked up at her with wide eyes, his chest swelling with pride. She didn't look tired at all. She didn't look angry either. She was calm, almost peaceful, as if what she had just done was nothing extraordinary. As they began walking home, Marcus couldn't hold back his words. "Aaliyah," he said softly, "you were amazing. The way you moved. They didn't even touch you." Aaliyah glanced down at him and gave a gentle smile. "It's not about being amazing, Marcus. It's about being prepared. I've practiced for years so that if moments like this happen, I can protect myself and others without getting hurt." "But you didn't even hit them," Marcus said in disbelief. "You didn't fight them like in the movies. You just moved. And they couldn't do anything." "That's the point," she replied, her tone patient and kind. "Real martial arts isn't about showing off or hurting people. It's about control. It's about staying calm when others lose their temper. If I had fought them with anger, I would have been just like them. But by staying calm, I showed them that strength comes from discipline, not from bullying." Marcus nodded slowly, trying to absorb her words. He had always looked up to his sister, but now, after seeing her in action, he felt something different. He didn't just admire her, he wanted to learn from her. As they walked further, a woman who had been watching from the crowd came up to them. She was holding her phone in her hand, and her expression was filled with respect. "Excuse me," she said kindly. "I just want to say that what you did back there was incredible. You protected your brother without losing your composure. That's something rare." Aaliyah gave her a small nod. "Thank you. I just did what anyone should do. Stand up for what's right." The woman smiled warmly before walking away, leaving Marcus glowing with pride. He tugged at his sister's sleeve. "Did you hear that? Everyone thinks you're amazing." Aaliyah chuckled softly. Marcus, it doesn't matter what people think. What matters is that you're safe and that those boys learn a lesson from today. Marcus lowered his gaze for a moment, then asked, "Do you think they'll really change?" Aaliyah sighed gently. "I hope so. Sometimes people act like bullies because they're hurting inside or because they don't know a better way to feel strong. Maybe after today they'll realize that putting others down isn't the answer." Her words echoed in Marcus's mind. He hadn't thought about the bullies in that way before. To him, they had always been just cruel people. But now he wondered if maybe they were also struggling with something. He didn't feel sorry for them, but he began to understand what his sister meant, that everyone has a choice, and sometimes all it takes is one powerful moment to make someone see things differently. By the time they reached home, the story had already begun to spread. Videos of the confrontation appeared on social media, shared by people who had witnessed it. In the videos, Aaliyah wasn't shown as violent or aggressive. She was calm, controlled, and graceful, deflecting every move the bullies made without ever raising her voice or striking them. Marcus sat on the couch scrolling through the clips on his phone, his eyes wide with amazement. "Aaliyah, people are saying you're like a superhero. Look at all these comments." She shook her head, sitting beside him. "I'm not a superhero, Marcus. I'm just someone who trained hard and knew how to stay calm. Don't let these comments fool you. The important thing isn't the attention, it's the message." "What message?" Marcus asked. "That kindness and discipline are stronger than fear and anger," she explained. "People are clapping for me now, but the real victory will be if those boys think twice before they hurt someone again." Later that evening, their parents came home and heard the full story. At first, their mother was worried. "Aaliyah, you could have been hurt," she said, her voice filled with concern. But their father, after watching the video, placed a hand on Aaliyah's shoulder. "She didn't fight, she defended. There's a difference. What she showed today was courage and discipline. You should be proud." Their mother softened and hugged both of them tightly. "I am proud, more than you can imagine. But I also want you to remember that walking away is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. Not every situation needs to be faced head-on." Aaliyah nodded respectfully. "I know, Mom. But today I couldn't walk away. Marcus needed me." Marcus hugged her then, holding her tightly. "I don't know what I would have done without you," he whispered. The next day at school, the atmosphere was different. Marcus walked through the halls with a new confidence. Some students gave him nods of respect, others whispered about his sister. For once, he wasn't the boy who was picked on. He was the boy whose sister had stood up for him with dignity and strength. Even the bullies looked different. They didn't swagger through the halls as they usually did. Instead, they kept their heads lower, their laughter quieter. It was clear the lesson from the park was still fresh in their minds. When Marcus passed them in the hallway, they didn't say a word. One of them even gave a small nod, as if silently acknowledging what had happened. After school, Marcus found Aaliyah waiting for him as always. He walked beside her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Do you think I could learn too? Not just how to defend myself, but how to stay calm like you do?" Aaliyah's smile was soft and full of pride. "Of course you can, Marcus. It's not about being the fastest or the strongest, it's about practice, patience, and learning to control yourself. If you want, I'll start teaching you." Marcus's face lit up with excitement. "Really? Really?" she said with a nod. "But remember, it's not just about self-defense, it's about respect. Respect for yourself, respect for others, even respect for those who don't respect you. That's the hardest part." Marcus thought about it carefully, then nodded with determination. "I want to try." As they walked home together, the evening sky painted itself with warm colors of orange and gold. Marcus felt something shift inside him. He wasn't just the little brother anymore. He was someone who could learn, grow, and maybe one day stand as strong as his sister. For Aaliyah, it wasn't about glory or attention. It wasn't about the videos or the whispers of admiration. It was about seeing her brother safe, seeing him gain confidence and knowing that the bullies had been shown a better way. She hoped that somewhere in their hearts, they would remember the calm girl who stood her ground without anger. And as the wind brushed softly through the trees, Aaliyah walked with her brother at her side, both of them stronger than before, not just in body but in spirit. The circle around Aaliyah tightened. The boys no longer looked as confident as before, but they didn't want to lose face. Their leader clenched his fists and gave a nod, signaling for his friends to move closer. Marcus stood a few feet behind. His sister, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his ears. He didn't know what was about to happen, but he trusted her more than anyone in the world. The first boy stepped forward, trying to grab Aaliyah's arm. His movement was clumsy, rushed, fueled more by pride than skill. In one smooth motion, she turned her body sideways, letting his hand miss completely. Before he could react, she gently pushed his shoulder and he stumbled back, losing balance but not hurt. The small crowd that had gathered gasped. It was such a simple move, but it showed that she was in complete control. Another boy, frustrated, charged in to grab her backpack. Aaliyah shifted her weight, sidestepped, and let him pass right by her. His own speed carried him forward and he nearly fell. She didn't need to strike or yell. She simply moved with precision, using their clumsiness against them. Marcus's eyes widened. He had seen her practice many times in the garage, watched her spin and strike with incredible speed. But this was different. This wasn't a practice, dummy, or a friendly sparring partner. These were real boys trying to intimidate her, yet she handled them with the same calmness she always carried. The leader grew impatient. His pride couldn't take the laughter that now came from the edges of the crowd. He rushed at her with more force, throwing his arms out as if he could scare her into stepping back. Aaliyah didn't retreat. She raised her hand, caught his arm mid-swing, and guided it down in a controlled way. He gasped, shocked at how easily she redirected his movement. Before he could react again, she stepped aside, letting him lose his balance once more. "Stop playing around," he shouted at his friends. But even his own voice carried a hint of fear now. Marcus saw it clearly. The bullies weren't just confused. They were starting to realize that Aaliyah wasn't like anyone they had ever picked on before. One of the younger boys hesitated, whispering to the leader, "Maybe we should just go. She's not normal." But the leader shook his head, unwilling to admit defeat. "No, we can handle her." He turned back to Aaliyah, trying to stand taller, trying to cover up the embarrassment written all over his face. "You think you're special, don't you? Just because you can dodge a little?" Aaliyah finally spoke again, her voice steady but not angry. "This isn't about me. It's about you learning that hurting others doesn't make you strong. It only shows how weak you really are." The word stung more than any push or shove. The crowd, now larger, murmured in agreement. People were beginning to record the scene on their phones. The bullies could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on them. Still, pride pushed them forward. Another boy, frustrated, rushed in again, trying to grab Aaliyah's shoulder. This time she moved even quicker. With a swift pivot, she avoided his grasp and lightly tapped his arm to guide him aside. He spun off balance and nearly tripped over his own feet. The crowd gasped again, some even clapping. The boy, red-faced, stepped back and shook his head, refusing to come closer. The leader was the only one who still tried. His face was red with anger, his movements sloppy with frustration. He lunged once more, this time trying to tackle her. But Aaliyah, calm as ever, bent her knees, shifted to the side, and redirected his weight with ease. He stumbled forward and fell to his knees in front of everyone. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers and laughter. Marcus felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly brought tears to his eyes. That was his sister, standing tall, not even breaking, a sweat showing the world what real discipline looked like. The leader scrambled to his feet, his pride now shattered. He wanted to charge again, but his friends stopped him. One of them grabbed his arm. "Enough, man, she's making us look bad." Another shook his head. "We can't beat her, just let's go." But the leader wasn't ready to give in. He glared at Aaliyah, breathing heavily. "What are you, some kind of fighter?" Aaliyah tilted her head slightly, her expression calm. "I'm someone who trains hard. I'm someone who knows that real strength isn't about proving you're better than others. It's about protecting the ones who need it. Her words hit harder than any strike. The crowd went silent, the truth in her voice echoing through the park. Marcus stepped forward now, standing beside his sister. For the first time that day, he didn't feel small. He didn't feel weak. He felt proud to be her brother, proud to stand with her. The leader looked around and saw the cameras, the phones, the people staring at him with disapproval. His pride deflated, and with a frustrated growl, he turned away. "Let's go," he muttered to his friends. Slowly, one by one, the boys backed away. Their shoulders slumped, their eyes downcast. They had come to the park laughing, certain of their power. Now they left in silence, humiliated by a girl they had thought would be easy to scare. As they disappeared down the street, the crowd began to clap. Some people cheered softly, others whispered about what they had just witnessed. Marcus looked up at his sister with wide eyes. "Aaliyah," he said softly, his voice full of admiration. "You were amazing." She turned to him and smiled, her calmness never fading. "I only did what I had to do. Remember what I always tell you, Marcus. Real strength isn't about fighting, it's about protecting. Never forget that." Marcus nodded, the words sinking deep into his heart. For the first time, he truly understood what she meant. Together, they picked up his bag. The crowd slowly began to disperse, though many still looked at Aaliyah with admiration. Some whispered about how incredible her moves, while others about how brave she had been. As the siblings walked away, Marcus kept glancing at her, his heart full of gratitude and pride. He had been scared. He had felt helpless, but his sister had shown him that courage could overcome fear. And though the bullies had walked away, Marcus knew they would never forget the lesson Aaliyah had taught them that day. Neither would he. The afternoon sun shone warmly on the siblings as they continued their walk home. The danger was gone, but the memory of what had just happened would stay with Marcus forever. The boys looked at each other and then back at Aaliyah. Their laughter had slowed, but their pride kept them from backing down. The leader of the group tossed Marcus's backpack into the air and caught it again, smirking. "You want this back? Then take it," he said, his voice full of mockery. Aaliyah didn't move right away. She stood tall, her eyes fixed on him with a calmness that made Marcus feel an odd kind of strength. He could tell she wasn't afraid. Not even a little. That alone seemed to confuse the bullies. Most people their age would have rushed in angrily, or begged them to stop, but Aaliyah didn't do either. She just stood there, quiet, confident, and unshaken. Marcus got to his feet slowly, brushing the dirt from his clothes. He wanted to run to his sister, but something inside him told him not to. He wanted to see what she would do. "Didn't you hear me?" the leader taunted. "If you want his bag, come and get it." He grinned and shoved the bag into the arms of another boy. That boy quickly tossed it across the circle to someone else, making a game out of Marcus's pain. Marcus clenched his fists. He wanted to shout, but before he could, Aaliyah finally stepped forward. Her movements were slow, controlled, almost as though she were measuring every step. She stopped just inside the circle of boys and looked directly at the leader. "You think you're strong because you're picking on someone smaller than you," she said quietly, her voice steady. "But strength isn't about hurting others. It's about protecting them." The boys laughed again, though this time their voices carried a hint of nervousness. One of them muttered, "What is she, some kind of philosopher?" Another said, "She's just a girl. What's she going to do?" The leader chuckled, pretending to flex his arms. "We're not scared of you. Go home before you get yourself hurt." He stepped closer, towering over her, trying to intimidate her. But Aaliyah didn't flinch. Her expression didn't change. She didn't even blink. That confidence alone made Marcus feel a rush of pride. The leader shoved Marcus's bag at her feet, pretending like he was being generous. But just as Aaliyah bent to pick it up, he lunged forward with a fake push, hoping to make her stumble. To everyone's surprise, she didn't fall back. She turned slightly, her movement smooth and effortless, and his arm brushed past her without touching. The boys froze. For a brief second, the leader's balance wavered and he almost stumbled forward. Aaliyah straightened, holding the bag now in her hands. "You should leave," she said, her voice firmer than before. The group exchanged glances. None of them were expecting this. They had picked on Marcus because he was quiet, because he wouldn't fight back. But his sister was different. There was something in the way she stood, the way she spoke, that made it clear she wasn't afraid of them. But pride is a tricky thing. The leader couldn't let his friend see him back down. His face flushed red and he forced out a laugh. "You think you're tough, huh? You think you can tell us what to do?" He stepped forward again, this time with real anger in his eyes. "I don't care if you're his sister, we're not scared of you." Marcus's heart raced. He wanted to shout at them to stop, to beg his sister not to get involved. But at the same time, a part of him wanted to see what would happen. He had seen her practice in the garage, the way she moved with precision and speed. But he had never seen her face real people outside of her dojo. The bullies circled closer, some laughing nervously, others looking unsure. One of them whispered, "Maybe we should leave." But the leader ignored him. His pride was louder than reason. "You should walk away while you still can," Aaliyah said once more, her voice calm but sharp. She wasn't raising her tone, but somehow it carried a weight that silenced the laughter around her. For a moment it seemed like the leader would back down. But then, with a sudden burst of movement, he reached out and tried to shove her shoulder. Everyone watching expected her to stumble backward. Instead, something remarkable happened. Aaliyah's body moved like water, fluid and precise. She shifted her weight, caught his wrist in her hand, and with a simple turn, redirected his shove so that he spun slightly off balance. It wasn't violent. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to show that she wasn't ordinary. The boy stumbled, caught himself, and looked back at her in shock. The other bullies gasped. One of them muttered, "Did you see that?" Marcus's eyes widened. He felt his chest swell with pride. That was his sister, calm, strong, and unshakable. The leader's face turned bright red, more from embarrassment than anger now. "You think you're smart?" he snapped, his voice louder this time. He turned to his friends. "Don't just stand there. Let's teach her a lesson." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. The boys began to move closer, surrounding Aaliyah. It was now clear they weren't going to back down easily. The tension in the air was heavy, almost like the world had paused for a moment, waiting to see what would happen. But Aaliyah didn't panic. She gently placed Marcus's bag behind her, making sure it was safe, and stood tall, her eyes scanning the group. She didn't clench her fists or raise her arms like someone ready for a street fight. Instead, she stood in a relaxed stance, balanced, her hands open at her sides. That calmness unsettled the bullies more than any shout or threat could have. They couldn't understand how she wasn't scared, how she wasn't running away like most people would. The leader growled, stepping forward again. He swung his arm as if to push her harder this time. Marcus's heart nearly stopped, but Aaliyah moved at the exact right moment. She sidestepped smoothly, guiding his momentum past her, and the boy almost lost his footing again. Gasps filled the air. Even the other boys started to hesitate. This wasn't what they had expected at all. The leader tried to mask his embarrassment with laughter. "She just got lucky," he said, though his voice didn't sound as confident as before. He turned to his friends. "Don't just stand there, get her." Marcus felt his chest pound harder. He wanted to run, to call for help, but something told him he didn't need to. His sister wasn't just standing her ground. She was in control. As the boys moved closer, a small crowd began to form at the edge of the park. People walking by had noticed the commotion and stopped to see what was happening. Whispers spread among them, but no one stepped in yet. The stage was set. The bullies thought they were in charge, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. Marcus stood frozen, torn between fear and awe, as his sister faced the group without flinching, and, in that tense moment, everyone watching understood one thing clearly. This wasn't going to end the way the bullies thought. Aaliyah was a girl who never liked to draw too much attention to herself. She lived in a small neighborhood where everyone knew each other. but she was the type of person who stayed focused on her own goals. Her days were usually simple: wake up early, go to school, finish her homework, and then head to her martial arts practice in the evening. Very few people in her school knew just how talented she was. To them, she was just the quiet, disciplined girl who always carried herself with calmness. But beneath that calmness was a level of strength and skill that had taken years of practice to build. Her younger brother Marcus was very different from her. He was smaller in size and much more timid. Where Aaliyah had a strong presence that made people respect her, Marcus often struggled with shyness. He wasn't weak, but he didn't know how to stand up for himself when others tried to push him around. Being in middle school, he sometimes found himself in situations where older kids picked on him just because they thought they could. Aaliyah always tried to encourage him by saying, "Marcus, strength isn't about fighting, it's about how you carry yourself. Always stay calm, even when others try to bring you down." One sunny afternoon after school, Marcus decided to walk home on his own. Usually, Aaliyah would meet him at the corner, but that day she was running late because she had to stay behind to finish a project. Marcus walked with his backpack slung over one shoulder, kicking small stones on the sidewalk as he went. He was thinking about the funny things his teacher had said in class when he suddenly noticed a group of boys following him. At first, he tried to ignore them, hoping they would just keep walking. But he soon realized they were not simply passing by. They were whispering to each other and laughing, and Marcus felt his stomach twist with nervousness. He picked up his pace, but the boys caught up quickly. "Hey, what's in your bag?" one of them said with a smirk. Marcus held his bag closer to his chest. "Just school stuff," he answered quietly, trying to avoid eye contact. The boys weren't satisfied. Another one stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "You think you're better than us just because you walk alone? Show us what you've got in there." Marcus shook his head. "No, I need to get home." His voice was soft but firm, and though he tried to stand straight, the nervousness was clear in his eyes. The leader of the group, a tall boy with a loud laugh, shoved Marcus lightly on the shoulder. "Come on, don't be shy, we just want to take a look." The shove was enough to make Marcus stumble backward. The other boys laughed, and the sound echoed in his ears like a cruel reminder that he was outnumbered. Marcus thought of his sister's words, "Stay calm, don't panic." He tried to keep walking, but the boys formed a circle around him. They teased him about his clothes, his size, even the way he walked. Every word felt like a heavy stone being thrown at him. "Give us the bag, or we'll take it ourselves," one of them threatened. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He didn't want to cry, but his throat was dry and his hands were shaking. He thought about running, but they had surrounded him. He thought about shouting for help, but there was no one close enough to hear. The park nearby was quiet, with only a few people far in the distance. The bullies grew bolder. One of them tugged at his backpack strap, nearly pulling Marcus off balance. Marcus pulled it back quickly and said, "Stop, please leave me alone." But his voice only made them laugh harder. The leader raised his fist, pretending like he was going to hit Marcus, and the boy flinched instinctively. That reaction gave them more confidence. They saw him as an easy target, someone who wouldn't fight back. At that moment, Marcus wished his sister was there. He remembered how she always told him that courage didn't mean you weren't afraid. It meant you kept standing even when you were. He tried to straighten up, but another push sent him falling onto the grass. His backpack slipped from his shoulders and landed beside him. The bullies looked down at him with smug smiles. "See? Told you he wouldn't do anything," the leader said. He bent down and picked up the bag, shaking it as if it were his prize. Marcus reached for it, but the boy stepped back, holding it just out of his reach. His face burned with embarrassment, not just from the bullying but from feeling powerless. He wanted to be strong like his sister, but he didn't know how to stop them. The group began tossing the bag between each other, laughing while Marcus scrambled to get it back. He tripped, fell, and stood up again, each time more desperate than before. The laughter around him grew louder, and for a moment it felt like the whole world was against him. Just then, as one of the boys prepared to push him down again, a sharp, commanding voice cut through the air. "Enough!" The sound froze everyone in place. Marcus turned his head, his heart leaping with relief when he saw who it was. Aaliyah stood at the edge of the park, her eyes fixed on the group of bullies. She had been walking a different route, home, but when she heard the noise and saw what was happening, she rushed over without hesitation. The boys glanced at her and then at each other. One of them chuckled nervously. "What's this? Your sister coming to save you?" Aaliyah's face was calm, but her voice was steady and sharp. "Give him his bag. Now." The leader tilted his head, amused. "Or what? You'll stop us? You don't look so tough." The boys laughed again, trying to hide the sudden unease that crept in. They didn't know her. They only saw a tall, slim girl standing there with quiet confidence. To them, she was just another person they could mock. Marcus's eyes filled with hope. He knew what the bullies didn't. He knew that behind his sister's calm expression was a strength that could not be measured by size or appearance. For the first time that afternoon, he felt safe, because Aaliyah had arrived. Their moment hung in the air like the pause before a storm. The bullies had no idea what was about to happen next.